Come with me on a trip into angling adventure. We'll ride the ragged edge where the fish are big and wild. From the fabled Walker's Cay, we'll travel to the ends of the earth, to the loneliest oceans and the farthest rivers in search of the best light tackle action. We'll pit the smallest lures and the lightest rods against the toughest fish, and we'll burn the stories into the memory of film on the Walker's Cay Chronicles. Like many American families, the Pallots are spread all over the map, and Scott, my number one brother, lives in Georgia, which is not exactly down the road from my house. Despite the distance, we always promise to get together, even when we know it probably won't happen, life's duties being what they are. But once in a while, the stars line up just right and put us in the same truck, heading down a familiar road to do what we've done together since we were kids, growing up in a sleepy little place called Miami, so very long ago. It's fancy fly rods now, but back then, Scott and I could get lost in the simplest things. Some ducks on a pond, or maybe a big dolphin caught on one of the many boats our father would charter for us on holidays. Imagine, we used to catch kingfish within a few hundred yards of Miami Beach. It was all high adventure for the mighty Pallot fishermen. Who knew that I would never really leave that boy back there? Though I would try to join the mighty American workforce, it just wouldn't take. There was such a powerful pull to stay clear of offices and glass buildings. A few years later, I got my wilderness wings, my first airboat, and I've not been without one ever since. We're on the edge of the St. Johns River Marsh, a piece of forest and marsh straight out of Florida's past. It reminds me of the Everglades, our favorite hunting and fishing place as teenagers. And as we glide over the sawgrass, the music of our youth plays in our heads. For Scott, these rare trips back to the old Florida awaken parts of him that have been asleep for far too long. And as I watch him drink in the wilderness, I know that he's settling down to the moment and the place, to the lumbering flight of an osprey as it carries a kill over the marsh. And I'm very glad to be with Scott, my number one and only brother. Oh, Scott, look at this crawfish.
That's a big one.
That is a big one. This is what everybody eats, too, out here. This is what everybody likes to eat. The best bait in the world, natural bait.
Ooh.
Here, let's let him go back in here. I've had some pretty good luck right in here. There's usually some nice shell cracker beds, and maybe we'll get some of those big coppery bluegills here. The St. Johns is a piece of the past living in the present. In winter, the bird life that gathers in the marsh is extraordinary. Seeing it all helps me keep the faith about the future of wilderness in Florida. In recent years, the birds have made some encouraging advances, including some species thought to be all but extirpated. Now, if a person knows how to move in the marsh, he can fish within talking distance of these birds.
There he is. He's not a big one, but he's one. Come here, little guy. Oh, look at that.
You know what this reminds me of, Scott? Back when we were little kids fishing in the canal behind the house and catching these little panfish and frying them on the bank. And back then, I never dreamed that there was any such thing as a sailfish or a marlin or a barracuda. These were the only fish in my whole world. And
they still taste mighty good.
Yep, they sure do. That looks like a big red breast, Scott.
Get out of your way.
Big fatso. Oh, that was a warmouth perch, and I thought it was a red breast, but it was a warmouth. What a tough little fighter they are.
Yeah, they do some good stuff.
Our conversation probably isn't much different than it was all those years ago. I'll bet the observations are pretty much the same, expressed now in the past tense. If fishing makes me young, fishing with Brother Scott practically makes me a preschooler. But that's part of life, isn't it? We spend half our time growing up and the other half trying to be kids. I got one, Scott. I like that other half better.
What you got?
I don't know yet. He's kind of got me in this grass here. I can't really do much with him. Let me see if I can get into this grass and get him out of here. I don't want to get up here where they are and ruin your fishing. Ooh, a nice bluegill. Look at the size of this, Scotty.
You want a crane?
Oh, man, look at this. Look at this. He's as big as your hand.
He looks yummy to me.
You know, sooner or later, we're going to have to keep some of these for a fish fry.
I'm speaking your language.
Well, I'll let this guy go. But we should definitely keep some.
I'm hooked.
All right. Way to go. Well, that's a good one. That is a good one.
This is a good fish. This is a little bass, I think.
All right. Yes, it is. Boy, they're just solid in here.
Little bass. I like little bass.
Waving sawgrass, blue sky, and a streamer fly stroking the tannic water. Another memory. Scotty, you remember that little lake in South Miami where we used to go with Daddy all the time and fish, and we used to catch those teeny little brim, and they used to bite, and you never could hook them. They were so hard to hook.
Yeah, I remember Lake Frustration.
Lake Frustration, that's right.
Yeah, you didn't have that permit feeling for that.
No, you certainly did not. But you know what? Those were great days.
The best.
Doesn't this remind you of that?
Yes, it does. Do you remember when we were down in the Bahamas, I think it was? Might have been Bimini, I'm not sure. Jack Tarr's place, and you caught that manta ray that was the size of a house.
You remember that?
Yeah, I was quite impressed. I was looking for the manta ray. You said, "Hey, Scotty, come here and look at this manta ray." And it turned out to be the whole patch of weeds. I couldn't see it because I thought it was a little thing.
I can't believe that you remember that trip. How long ago does that have to be?
I don't know. I think I was 7 or 8. Same
Amazing.
trip. You caught a nurse shark with your hands.
Ooh, I'm not sure I'd want anybody to know that.
I was impressed.
Sorry.
We're hooked up here. I think it's another little brim. Look here, little guys. That's a good one, Flip.
It is a good one.
That's a good one. Mighty fine. Ready to go home, buddy? Let's go back home. All right.
Scotty. But we're gonna eat this.
Oh man, this is a pretty fish.
Perfect size. This. Do you like to eat brim?
They're my favorite. They're incredible edibles.
Me too. Me too. As the day unfolds out on the St. Johns River marsh, Scott and I pick up those invisible threads that connect siblings. We raise them, and when they touch, they merge, and all the years melt away. And now as we cross the marsh, our brotherhood is intact, and that unspoken communication is renewed. And now the need to show Scott something is felt, and I point the airboat toward a certain island. Scott doesn't ask me where we're going, and I don't tell him. He knows I want to show him something, and he doesn't need to know anymore. It's a subtle form of trust that one has for an older brother. These pilings here are from an old dock where they used to bring these barges, take the cows off these pastures and out these woods, and barge them up to Jacksonville along the St. Johns River. Perfectly round. Look at how... I have no idea what Indians these would have been. And this is the thing that I really wanted to show you. Look at the size, Scott. Look at the size of these boughs that hang out over here.
Beautiful.
This tree, a tree like this has got to be 1,000 years old maybe. And they used to, in this country right around here, they used to use these big boughs in the timber industry. And they used to develop a set of plans all the way over in Europe somewhere where they had timbers that curved up in the stem of ships and in the sterns. They'd take the plans and send people out in the woods with the plans, and they'd find a limb that corresponded to the plans, and they'd harvest that limb out of these oak trees.
Amazing.
We noticed the smoke earlier when it was nothing very impressive, and we thought a rancher was burning off a field. We don't think that now. We were looking at the beginning of one of the most frightening natural disasters in Florida's long history of natural disasters. Central Florida had been in a long drought, longer than any in recorded history. And when the fires finally started, they raged for weeks, leaping across interstates, engulfing everything in their paths, homes, malls, office buildings, and by the time it was finally over, millions of acres had been destroyed and hundreds of homes. Mine was almost one of them. The fires licked at the edges of my lawn, just a few yards from the house. Firemen came from around the world to battle the blaze. But now, as threatening as that smoke looked to us, neither Scott nor I had any idea of what lay ahead.
Maybe you could give me a few tips and pointers about fishing this particular area.
Well, it's not hard. Here, look, everything happens for a reason. See how the water breaks around this thing here, this little bunch of lettuce and that white flowers there on the end, and the water breaks around that and comes into this pond here.
Right.
Those fish will probably be laying right up here in the pond in the little bit deeper water, watching that water sweep around the end of those flowers there. So if you can get your popper right up there after those white flowers, and then look at all the lettuce along this cattail wall. And just blind cast along there. As a matter of fact, I'd start right here. Just move right over here and strip some line out.
Okay.
That's it. Perfect.
You never know. Oh, they're really hitting over here. There's a lot of action going on down there.
Now this is fun.
This is a good panner.
Boy, oh boy, this is going to make the nicest meal.
This is a good panner here.
This is going to make a wonderful meal.
Oh, this is a bass.
No, it's a gar.
Oh, it is.
It's a big gar, alligator gar. Whoa. Boy, we're just getting a little bit of everything today. You ever see the teeth on these guys? Not only do they have big teeth, but, I don't know if you can see them. Take a look at the needle-like teeth of that guy. And they can really tear up your fly. Whoops. And they're also very slippery.
When wet.
Yeah, don't get them wet. Got him.
I can just keep them on here.
You're unstoppable, man.
All right.
Let me get this guy on the stringer here. We'd had a day that most fishermen would rate as uneventful. Some might even feel they had wasted their time. Well, my answer to that is, what would you rather be doing? Fixing your car? Paying your bills? I'm sure that would either raise a smile or some hackles. Well, Scott and I disagree with the uneventful tag. We enjoyed ourselves quite a lot, thank you. We talked about old times. We caught some small bass and big bluegills. We observed the beginning of a historical natural event rising over the Florida skyline. And by the time the day had ended, we had drawn closer, drifted back into a time when the cares were simple and easily handled. And if words didn't come, all we had to do was pick up our guitars and let our fingers do the talking.
Outstanding.